What's going on, everyone, and welcome back for another video on the Future Strategy Gaming channel. As always, I'm Drew. Do the YouTube stuff, hit subscribe if I earn it, yada yada yada. Special shout out to any of the returning subscribers watching this video. Thank you very much indeed. So, in this video, we're going to look at the new healing job Sage and my first impressions of the job at its cap of level 90. I'm going to cover my thoughts on this job related specific quest, its flow and basic gameplay, and I'm also going to talk about my likes and dislikes of the job. Towards the end, I'll kind of give my very early opinion of how I think it fits into the raiding scene, but let's not waste anyone's time. Let's just dive right in. Now, it's a common fact that for most people like shiny new things. Sage has a ton of different flashy animations, and if you have any personal excitement or attachment to anything sci-fi related, the spell sounds are absolutely fantastic. Starting with the job related quests, I don't want to spoil too much of those for people who care about it and haven't gotten through it yet, but it's a typical tale. Meet the evildoers, they're using the Sage powers for evil, stop them. It's not the most impressive story arc, but it isn't bad. What I like more are the job related duties that come along during this quest. This actually saved the storyline for me personally, and for what it's worth, these duties are extremely fun to do. I do have one criticism about the duties, and I'm sure others might share this thought if they've done them as well. It's extremely prominent in Sage duties, but any duty in which you play a healing class with NPCs you're supposed to heal. For the love of God, please, Square Enix, hear my plea. If you're going to have me heal these NPCs as part of the duty and the storyline itself, can you please put them in the freaking party frames? Manually clicking the targets I need to heal is an absolute nightmare, and some of these duties are actually kind of challenging. So much so that I wiped on one of them, and it was literally just because I couldn't click my intended target through the mob I was fighting. That's extremely frustrating, but it's been happening with healer specific duties for as long as I can remember, so I guess I'm kind of used to them now. Now, I probably should have mentioned this earlier in the video, but I'll do so now. This video is not intended to be a healing guide for Sage. I'm working on that right now, as well as some of the other healers, but this is just to go over the basics of the class. Let's talk about Sage's flow and basic gameplay. If you're familiar with WoW in particular, the Sage functions very similarly to the Discipline Priest in that you heal through dealing damage. The major difference here is in 14, the Sage specifically chooses whom to heal through damage and no one else. There are, in my opinion, three different systems, if you will, of how the Sage operates. So the first system is the Cardia System. This is the one where you choose a person to receive the heals based on you dealing damage, and it functions pretty well. While I'm still getting used to it, I think I still notice two very particular things. One is that Cardion healing, that's the target who receives the healing that you give out from dealing damage, can crit. That's completely unexpected and in some cases is extremely beneficial. The other thing that I notice is that in regard to the damage you deal, Cardia has a set potency. This is both good and bad. It makes the incoming damage feel a bit more spiky on the tank and can cause someone newer to this job to panic a bit and try to force out some heals from other areas of the toolkit. The good side of this, however, barring a crit heal, is that you can pre-plan how to use all of your attacks on knowing that this is probably going to heal the same amount and there's no need to hold anything and you can just use abilities as necessary. The second system is Eucrasia. This one, for lack of a better term, is wonky. Eucrasia is an ability that you will use to change the function of three other abilities in your toolkit. In premise, that's not hard to understand, but in practice, it feels a bit off. The three spells it augments are your main damage spell, your single target healing spell, and your AoE healing spell. The augmentation of these three spells in order changes those to your damage over time, your single target shield, and your AoE shield. The main reason it's wonky is because of its interaction. If you're familiar with Dancer at all, particularly the steps mechanic and how fast that operates, Eucrasia is identical in speed. The practice of it, however, as a healer main feels really weird to use one spell to then put up your dot or to put up your shield or your AoE shield. Once you get past that very basic gameplay change, it's actually a fine system. What's nice is once Eucrasia is cast, there's no set time limit needed to use those augmented spells, so you can preemptively be in that stance, so to speak, prior to engaging with any enemies. One other small gripe I have with the Eucrasia gameplay, if I'm in the middle of a large trash mob pull and I want to interact with the third system that I'm going to talk about next, Eucrasian augmented spells, particularly the shield ones, do not put up a very large shield unless you crit with the heal that it provides. Thankfully, the entire toolkit does have some get out of jail free cards to help you out with some of these issues, but being as the single target shield augmented with Eucrasia directly impacts the next system, it doesn't seem to flow as cleanly as I think it probably could. Okay, the third and final system is technically two systems in one, Adder's Gall and Adder's Sting. So addressing Adder's Gall, this system essentially has a 3 charge maximum and it recharges on a 30-second cycle. The timer does not keep going once it's capped, so being at cap in combat is typically a no-go. This portion of the Adder system is used with 4 spells that cannot be cast without one of these charges. 2 of the spells provide some form of healing with a damage reduction attached. One of them is a single target heal and the final is an AoE heal. All of these happen to be instant cast. Now, with extensive play on the Sage so far, the only issue I have with this portion of Adder's Gall would probably be the recharge timer, and that's actually only during trash pulls. Boss pulls have enough in your toolkit to work around that you're not constantly deprived of Adder's Gall charges. On trash, when the healing output required is substantially higher, there can be some very sketchy pulls and spikes in damage that make you pucker up a little bit. Now, the other half of this system is the Adder's Sting portion. Just like Adder's Gall, this also has a maximum of 3 charge. However, you use these charges to cast an AoE damage spell instead of any healing spells. Well, I mean, technically it is a healing spell if you count it healing your Cardian target, but I digress. Gaining these charges relies on the Cardia System, specifically the single target shield we just talked about. One thing of note is that the shield itself must be consumed via enemy damage in order to grant the Sage one of the Adder Sting stacks. Now that we've got the basic premise out of the way, let's talk first about what I don't like about the Sage job. First and foremost, it's got to be the healing spells that are augmented by Cardia. The base ones, not the augmented versions themselves. Honestly, they feel useless. Outside of the level 90 ability and your main DPS spell, the rest of the entire toolkit is instacast, most of which are on a relatively small enough cooldown that consistent usage is actually viable. I understand that primarily it's so that Cardia can in fact augment them, but they feel more like placeholders than something I would ever actually want to cast. The second thing I'm not too big of a fan of is the set potency of Cardia itself. Being that it can crit, maybe once I meld my gear I'll feel a little bit different, but this is a first pass video, so to me this feels very weak. I guess I could make the argument that because I'm not only healing my Cardia target, but I'm also dealing damage to the enemy, this is kind of right in line with where it should be, but as of right now, it feels like it's on the low side. Now, my third and final dislike, and this may not entirely be my fault, and it might not also be the guilty party's fault. Now, since the Sage job is so new, many other players haven't been able to grasp how it functions. As a result, as well as basically being trained by the community almost the entire way through Shadowbringers, and now anyone new to the game, tanks are leaving no room for Sages to breathe at all. Maybe I'm isolated and this is just me and how I feel. Maybe I don't have a full handle on how Sage works. I feel like I do, but I could be wrong. Wall-to-wall pulls are extremely difficult, especially the second wall-to-wall pull heading towards bosses. I truly feel like the trash requires the entirety of the Sage toolkit to keep the group up, and even then I feel like one mistake from you or the tank can be detrimental in trying to catch up. This gets exacerbated by my previous point about the Adder's Gall recharge timer being 30 seconds and just it feeling like it's a bit high. 15 seconds I think would actually be too low, and I don't know if 20 seconds is a good middle ground, but that would make the most sense in my opinion, as the total time start to finish for recharges, if it were 20 seconds, would be 1 minute instead of what it currently is at 90 seconds. All right, let's move on to the heavy part of this video, what I truthfully really like about the Sage. First, it's got to be the healing portion of the toolkit. Square Enix definitely either hinted or directly said there would be more damage this expansion to allow healers to heal more. I feel it on both my 90s, the Astrologian and the Sage, as well as my 85 Scholar. That being said, the healing portion of the Sage has a lot of different and unique ways to heal groups. While it's true that both regen and shield healers have aspects of the others somewhere in their toolkit, the biggest thing I notice is that Sage's damage reduction on spells that comes as an added bonus. For instance, every healer has a bubble of some kind. To me, the Sage currently has the best one, as it's an instant cast with a rather large range, and once you're at a specific level, a trait actually augments it to incorporate a heal over time on top of it. While healing from that heal over time isn't necessarily a lot, it being instant instead of targeted like the Scholar or White Mage, and being able to move unlike the Astrologian makes this feel particularly good. I guess the one negative I could state is that it costs 1 Adder's Gall, but I'll take it for how easy it is to use. Now the second thing, and this is probably personal, Definitely the sounds and the animations. They are that good. 14 is one of the first games I want to play with sound on. The music's fantastic. The spell sounds are fantastic. And as a result, not only do we get a sci-fi related noises, but we get laser beams and a ton of them. I love Star Wars. This feels like a crossover and is extremely well executed. The last thing has to be the complete difference of healing style. It's no secret that green DPS is a community accepted premise. During the lead up to Endwalker, Square Enix made comments about wanting healers to heal more. Well, I feel like they held true to that promise because of the nature of the Sage job. It works in the first place that this is a breath of fresh air. I've had the same complaints about the other 3 healers DPS rotations and how stale they feel for a long time now. While I still think adding spells, even if it's just like how PvP works where you use one spell and the exact same button just essentially changes, some new DPS spells need to come to the other healers. It's a no-brainer, and being able to focus a bit more on pew-pewing and the variety of spells that the Sage offer, it makes Sage a surefire hit for a lot of people. As far as how I see Sage in the raiding scene moving forward, the easy answer is it's hard to say. Now, the more complex answer, I think, and the not scapegoaty way of getting out of this is that during Prague, especially in the opening months for new bosses, the need for larger shields as well as the movement speed buff that Scholar has makes me feel like Scholar's going to win out. Now, as things are downed and the goal is no longer about covering mistakes the group made, but instead about increasing the speed at which you kill the boss, the transition to Sage seems a little bit more easier or approachable. That's not to say that you can't go play Sage in your static right when rating drops and succeed. I'm not saying that. I just personally think that since we've defined the healers into 2 subsets of regen or shield, the stronger shield's going to win in this situation. Now, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. What are some of your thoughts on the first weeks of Sage gameplay? As I said earlier in this video, I'll be making an actual healing guide for the Sage as well as the other healers in the next few weeks, and we will be going into the nitty-gritty a bit more on that video. This video is probably going to drop sometime around December 20th. I'm recording it on December 17th. For all of those out there who are watching that celebrate any of the major holidays that are coming up during this time, happy holidays. The new year is upon us and a new day for Final Fantasy XIV is here. As always, I'm Drew from Team Future Strategy, and I'll see you next time.